Hey everyone, tonight we're going to watch the Roman Empire do something huge, and then trip over its own sandals trying to deal with the consequences. It's the year 212, and the Emperor Caracalla has just passed a law giving Roman citizenship to every free person in the empire. Sounds noble, right? Almost modern. But hang on, there's trouble brewing in the marble halls of Rome, and it's got very little to do with equality. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You step out of your clay-walled house into the Mediterranean morning heat, sandals slapping the stone street. Something feels different in the air, but not in the fresh new day kind of way. No, it's more like the moment after a big announcement at a family gathering. Polite smiles, nervous shifting, everyone wondering what it really means because you've just been told you're a Roman citizen now. Well, so everyone has. It's 212 CE. Emperor Caracalla, son of Septimius Severus, has issued the Constitutio Antoniniana, a law that makes every free male in the empire, from Britannia to Syria, a citizen. And that means you. Yes, you who used to be just a provincial baker or a goat herder, or a smith in the back of nowhere. Now you're Roman. On paper, anyway, you'd expect fireworks or free wine. Instead, there's silence. The shopkeeper squints at his coin purse. A soldier shrugs and tightens his belt. Your neighbor mutters, "Now I gotta pay Roman taxes, huh?" Because here's the thing, this massive gesture, it's probably less about rights and more about revenue. Roman citizens pay taxes, lots of them. Historians still debate whether Caracalla's motives were generous or just greedy. One camp says he wanted to unite the empire. The other says he just wanted to squeeze more denarii out of a tired, overstretched machine. And speaking of Caracalla, he's not exactly a crowd favorite, not even close. Imagine a guy who thinks he's Alexander the Great reincarnated, but acts more like a paranoid nightclub bouncer with a personal army. Caracalla is one of those emperors you kind of want to root for. At first, he's young, he's got big dreams, but then you remember he murdered his own brother Gaeta in front of their mother. That's right, front row seat, family trauma edition. You try to avoid eye contact with the local guards these days. Everyone's nervous, because when the guy at the top is this volatile, nobody's safe. Senators whisper about new plots. Temples perform extra sacrifices. You stop by the forum and hear a joke whispered behind a toga. Why did Caracalla cross the Rubicon? To make sure no one was following. It's not even funny, but you laugh. Better to laugh than cry. The empire looks the same. On the surface, columns still gleam. Aqueducts still carry water to the cities. The legions still march. But beneath the mosaic floors, cracks are spreading. Big ones. Everywhere you go, there's tension. In Egypt, they grumble about lost privileges. Citizenship used to be special, earned, something that marked you apart from the others. Now it's common. Like handing out laurels at a funeral. One man spits. You nod, mostly because you don't want to argue. The markets are full, but prices keep rising. The silver in the coins gets thinner each year, shaved down like the emperor's patience. And the soldiers, they're getting very used to emperors bribing them. You start to suspect that loyalty now comes in bags of gold, not oaths. Oh, and speaking of soldiers, Caracalla's constantly on the move. Fighting here, campaigning there, killing people in Gaul, building a few massive baths in Rome when he's bored. They're beautiful, sure, but extravagant. And you wonder if they're just meant to distract everyone from how unstable things have gotten. Kind of like hanging a new curtain over a cracked wall. Then, like any dramatic story, it ends. In a ditch, literally. In 217, Caracalla is stabbed to death on the side of a road near Carhaix, probably while relieving himself. Yeah, the guy who imagined himself the next Alexander gets knifed while peeing. There's something poetically Roman about that. And who replaces him? His Praetorian prefect, Macrinus, not an emperor by blood, not even a senator. Just a man with a good title and a dagger in the right place. This is the beginning of the end for any idea of a stable dynasty. You feel it like a chill down your spine as the news spreads. People stop talking in the streets. The baker closes. Early, you walk faster. The empire has handed out citizenship to everyone, and now no one feels safe. A fun little sidebar no one talks about. When Caracalla granted universal citizenship, he technically made it possible for anyone to run for office. But did that change anything? Not really. The same rich families stayed rich. The same poor folk stayed out of the Senate. It was a gesture, a stamp on a scroll. You still get pushed aside in the forums, and your vote, if you have one, still echoes into the void. But hey, now you can legally wear a toga, which is great unless you live somewhere hot, or humid, or are allergic to wool, and so the Severan dynasty continues, barely. Macrinus tries to hold power, but it slips through his fingers. He's executed after just over a year. The next emperor is Elagabalus, a teenager from Syria with a taste for gold, silk, and religious drama. He marries a Vestal virgin, very not allowed, worships a sun god from home, and throws the kind of parties that make Roman nobles clutch their pearls. You spend most of his reign pretending he doesn't exist. Then there's Severus Alexander, a boy emperor ruled by his mother and surrounded by chaos. He tries, bless him. But the world is changing too fast. The provinces are restless. The soldiers want money. The economy is wheezing. And soon the borders will erupt. And you start going to bed earlier, just in case. Because you know what's coming next, don't you? You've seen it in the sky, how the sunsets burn a little hotter, how the wind feels dry and sharp. You've heard it in the way soldiers talk, fast, nervous, always looking over their shoulder. You've felt it when you run your hand over a cracked marble wall and realize no one's fixed it in years. This world is tipping, and soon it will fall. You wake up to shouting. Not the usual morning buzz of vendors or temple bells, but boots, metal, something frantic. You peek through the curtain, another caravan of soldiers, more dust. Another emperor, maybe. You've stopped keeping track. Because we're in the middle of the 3rd century now, and the Roman Empire is falling apart like a cheap tunic in the rain. The Severan dynasty is over. The emperors that followed? A blur of names, deaths, and desperate choices. Most of them don't last long enough for you to remember their faces, let alone their policies. The empire isn't being governed anymore. It's being managed like a forest fire you're trying to stomp out with sandals. There's a name for this stretch of time, the crisis of the 3rd century. Sounds dramatic, right? It is. And it's not just one crisis. It's every crisis all at once. Civil wars, plagues, inflation, invaders, assassinations, famine, mutiny. Oh, and did we mention earthquakes? If the Roman Empire were a character in a bedtime story, this is the chapter, where they start seeing shadows in every hallway. You grab a stale piece of bread and walk to the forum. What's left of it? There's graffiti on the walls. The fountain isn't running. A boy throws stones at a statue with no nose. People speak in hushed tones. You overhear 2 merchants arguing Gallienus will fix it. Gallienus won't make it to next spring. That's the mood. Every emperor seems to come with an expiration date. Between 235 and 284, over 25 emperors will rule, and most will die violently. Imagine a job interview where the first question is, are you comfortable being stabbed in your sleep? The Roman army isn't loyal anymore. Not really. It's opportunistic. They raise up generals they like, then kill them when they don't deliver. You watch a general ride into town with laurel wreaths and cheers. 2 weeks later, his head is on a pike. You don't even flinch. Remember how citizenship was supposed to unify the empire? Well, now that everyone's a citizen, no one feels Roman anymore. Identity is crumbling. Loyalty goes to local leaders, not to the distant idea of Rome, and so the empire splinters. First, there's the Gallic Empire. You hear about it like it's a rumor at first. Oh, did you hear Gaul has its own emperor now? But it's true. The western provinces, Gaul, Hispania, and Britannia, they break off, start doing their own thing, new coins, new officials. You look at a Gallic coin and think, this feels foreign. On the Eastern Front, it's even weirder. A place called Palmyra, led by a queen named Zenobia, rises up. She's clever, bold, and refuses to play second fiddle. Soon she's ruling Egypt and Syria. You hear she rides with a golden saddle and speaks Latin, Greek, and Aramaic. Everyone secretly kind of loves her. Except Rome, of course. You can't tell anymore who's rebel and who's legitimate. The lines are blurry. One man's usurper is another man's protector. You cross the market and see 3 different imperial seals, each one claiming to be the true Rome. You sigh, and buy olives from the one with the shortest line. The borders? Oh, those are barely holding. Germanic tribes raid across the Rhine and Danube. The Goths burn their way through the Balkans and even sack Athens. Persians push from the east. Cities that once boasted of Roman strength now beg for Roman help. It doesn't come. Not because Rome doesn't care, but because Rome can't. There aren't enough legions, not enough money, not enough Rome. And then the plague hits. Nobody knows where it came from. Maybe the East. Maybe the gods. People just start getting sick. Fever, bleeding, coughing, streets go quiet, fewer vendors, more funerals. You help your neighbor bury his wife and try not to look too closely at her face. You feel it creeping into everything. Even the wine tastes sour. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate one of the stranger things happening right now. In the middle of all this madness, there's a brief period, around the 260s, when the empire seems to be run by teenagers and mothers-in-law. No joke. Gallienus, the emperor at the time, is so overwhelmed with revolts and invasions that he starts delegating like mad. In one province, a 13-year-old boy is proclaimed Caesar. In another, a general's wife starts issuing orders. Meanwhile, the Senate sits around debating whether to rebuild a broken aqueduct or just pray. It's like the empire is being run by a substitute teacher, and no one's doing their homework. You look around your town and realize the only people who still seem confident are the priests, because at least the gods haven't been assassinated yet. Money becomes a joke. The coin you're holding, worthless, literally. It's made of tin now. You remember your father's stories, when a denarius could buy a meal. Now it barely buys hope. To deal with the crisis, emperors just mint more coins, but with less and less silver. Hyperinflation kicks in. You once bought olive oil for 5 coins, now it costs 50. Tomorrow? Who knows? You start trading in grain, or clothes, or promises. There's a term for this economic spiral: debasement. You think, yeah, that about sums up everything right now, and yet life goes on. Children are still born. You hear laughter in alleyways. A potter down the road invents a new glaze that makes amphora sparkle in the sun. A traveling actor performs a tragic play about a general who talks to ghosts. You cry when he dies. The actor, not the general. Because even as the empire collapses, people still hope. That maybe someone will fix it. That maybe this next emperor will be different, and that's where we'll go next. Part 3, Patchwork Empire. It's late afternoon and the wind carries the scent of warm stones and crushed pine needles. You're walking along the Via Flaminia, one of the oldest Roman roads, but the stones are cracked now, and weeds poke through the gaps like they're trying to take the empire back one root at a time. You pass an old milestone. It's still etched with the name of an emperor, but which one? It's hard to read. The face is chipped off like someone got angry and took a hammer to history. A dog barks in the distance. You keep walking, because something's shifting. The empire, battered and splintered, has somehow not died, not completely. In fact, a strange thing is starting to happen. Patch by patch, someone is sewing it back together. You arrive at a town and see a name on every banner, every arch, every coin. Aurelian, he's the guy everyone's whispering about now. The commander who doesn't die, doesn't quit, doesn't argue with the Senate, just wins. He's got a scar across his cheek and a reputation for discipline so harsh it makes grown men stop chewing mid-bite. When Aurelian becomes emperor, in 270 Rome is a jigsaw puzzle missing a lot of pieces, but he's got a plan and fists. His first move? Reclaim the parts of the empire that broke off. Remember the Gallic Empire and Zenobia's Palmyrene Empire? Yeah, he crushes them. Not politely either. It's swift, brutal, efficient. You're in the forum when the news arrives. Zenobia has been captured. You remember hearing legends about her, how she rode into battle with a bow and never backed down. Some say she drank lion's blood. She didn't, but it sounds cool. Now she's in chains, or maybe not. There's a story that Aurelian, in a rare display of respect, let her live in luxury in a Roman villa. Historians still debate whether she was executed, humiliated, or simply retired with a suspiciously comfortable pension. You imagine her sipping wine under a fig tree, raising an eyebrow at the chaos she once commanded. With the outlying territories restored, Aurelian turns inward. He's horrified by what Rome has become. You walk past a granary and hear a guard whisper, "The emperor's coming." Everyone straightens up, because Aurelian doesn't tolerate slackers, or thieves, or senators who nap through meetings. He reforms the currency, finally putting actual silver back in the silver coins. It's like watching someone fix a leaky ship with real nails instead of wax and hope. Prices stabilize, people breathe. Then he builds a wall. A massive, serious, no-joke wall around the city of Rome itself. You stand beneath it one morning, staring up. It's cold stone, 15 feet tall in places and still growing. Why now? Rome hasn't needed walls in centuries, but Aurelian knows. Things are different now. Barbarians aren't just raiding the provinces, they're knocking on the gates. Rome is no longer untouchable, so he encircles it like a parent wrapping arms around a child. It's both comforting and terrifying. Here's your quirky detail. To boost morale, Aurelian reinvents the gods. No, seriously. He promotes the worship of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. You can't miss it. New temples, sun-shaped medallions, murals. It's a smart PR move, a unifying symbol. One empire, one light. Sound familiar? Some modern historians think Aurelian's sun cult laid the groundwork for monotheistic trends that would later influence Christianity. At the time, though, you just think, well, at least it's cheerful. You buy a loaf of bread, stamped, with a sunburst, and bite into it like hope tastes better with crust. But don't get too comfortable, because Aurelian doesn't last. In 275, just 5 years into his reign, he's murdered. Not in battle, not by rivals, by his own staff over a forged document that made them think he was going to execute them. Imagine being stabbed because someone was bad at paperwork. You hear about it over dinner. Someone drops their spoon, you don't even flinch because that's Rome now. And so begins another seesaw of rulers, some promising, some pitiful. One named Tacitus, not the historian, unfortunately, tries to clean things up, but dies of exhaustion. Another Probus wins battles and builds bridges, literally. You help lay stones for one of his projects and get paid in grain and wine. For a moment, things seem steady, but always just around the corner. Betrayal, plague, bad omens. You start to understand why the augurs are always frowning. By the early 280s, the empire is still huge, but fraying. You walk into a tavern near the Danube frontier and the conversation goes like this. You Roman? Depends who's asking. You pay taxes. Only when someone's collecting. That's the vibe. The identity of Roman is no longer a birthright. It's a negotiation. Then one day a name starts to echo through the streets. At first it's just murmured, Diocletian, then shouted, then painted in red across the Senate hall. He's a general, like always. But something about him is different. You watch as he rides into Rome, not like a savior, but like a CEO here to audit the mess. He doesn't promise peace. He promises structure. And Rome is finally ready to listen. Let's pause here and zoom out. The Roman Empire is nearly 300 years old at this point. It has survived assassinations, revolts, currency collapse, and plagues that emptied whole cities. It has been split in three, stitched together again, and still manages to get its taxes collected, mostly. You think about that as you look out over a hilltop near Capua. The sun sets over broken aqueducts and fields of barley. Rome is tired, but not dead. Historians often point to this exact moment, the end of the 3rd century, as the borderline between Classical Antiquity and Late Antiquity. The music changes, the colors dull, the gods shift, the empire survives, but it starts to speak a different language. You feel it too. The people don't look at Rome and think eternal, they think he's still standing, and honestly, that's kind of impressive. Part 4, Diocletian fixes it, sort of. You're asleep under a fig tree when they come for you. Okay, not you specifically, but you get the idea. It's the new draft. Again, the army needs more bodies, and the empire has a brand new emperor. With a brand new plan, Diocletian. You roll over, groan, and reach for your sandals. Because when Diocletian asks, you don't say no. And let's be honest, things were getting a little chaotic. Civil wars, inflation, the usual assassinations. You remember when a general became emperor for 2 weeks? His face was barely dry on the coin molds before he was out. So when Diocletian rises to power in 284, he doesn't just rule, he redesigns. First thing he does, splits the job. You're standing in the forum one morning when a herald announces the news. Rome now has 2 emperors. Diocletian will rule the east, his buddy Maximian will rule the west. It's like hiring a co-manager because your empire is just that dysfunctional. Then Diocletian adds 2 more junior emperors called Caesars. The system is now a square. 2 Augusti, 2 Caesars. It's called the Tetrarchy. You try to draw it in the dirt with a stick. Feels stable, feels reasonable. Spoiler, it will absolutely collapse in less than 20 years. But for now, things work. Diocletian starts building. Fortresses, roads, grain depots, you haul stones for weeks. You think maybe this emperor won't die horribly. Then come the reforms, taxes, more organized, even more brutal. Currency, reissued and revalued. Jobs, now inherited. If your dad was a baker, congrats, you're a baker too. Same for blacksmiths, grave diggers, and flute players. The economy is less free market and more you're glued here forever. This new structure gets called the dominate. Gone is the illusion of the Senate having power. Diocletian dresses in silk and gold, requires people to bow and reintroduces divine status. You remember when emperors pretended to be modest? Not anymore. He's no longer first among equals. He's more like divinely approved autocrat. You squint at a statue of him and think, okay, maybe tone down the jawline. Still, people don't revolt. Why? Because everything finally feels like it's running, like the empire has a brain again. You walk through a city and see guards paid on time, aqueducts repaired, markets bustling. There's even a census. You grumble when they count your goats, but there's a shadow forming. See, Diocletian is deeply conservative, not in a back-in-my-day way, more like a burn-down-your-temples way. He's especially suspicious of Christians. You notice it when your neighbor stops hosting evening gatherings. Then you hear whispers of arrests. Then you walk by the arena and see smoke. The great persecution begins. Diocletian issues edicts. Churches are destroyed. scriptures burned, Christians imprisoned. Some are tortured, some executed. You see a family vanish overnight. Their home is sealed, their names scraped off the wall. Historians still debate whether this was Diocletian's idea or whether local governors escalated things. But the fear is real. The empire, now stabilized politically and economically, becomes unstable spiritually, and yet Christianity doesn't die. In fact, it spreads underground quietly, sometimes with sympathy. Even a few soldiers you know start sneaking into services. You go to one just to see. There are candles, bread, whispered songs. Something's changing. In 305, Diocletian does the most surprising thing of all. He retires. No poisoning, no murder. Just walks away to grow cabbages at his villa in Split. You hear about it from a merchant. He said he's tired. Of what? Ruling 50 million people. Fair enough. But the second he leaves, the whole tetrarchy starts wobbling like a lopsided table. Maximian doesn't want to retire. The Caesars fight each other. Ambitious generals take sides, and then Constantine, the son of Constantius, one of the former Caesars. Constantine is tall, commanding, and annoyingly competent. You see his name scratched into walls before he's even declared emperor. He marches on Rome, defeats rivals, claims power, and in 312 he fights the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. Legend says he sees a vision the night before, a cross in the sky, and the words, "In this sign, conquer." He orders his soldiers to paint Christian symbols on their shields. You're there, you hold a brush. You don't really get it, but hey, it's orders, they win. And suddenly Christianity isn't a persecuted cult, it's a tolerated faith. The Edict of Milan, 313, legalizes it. No more raids, no more burnings. The empire, once polytheistic and suspicious, is now pivoting. Constantine starts favoring Christians in government, builds churches, even considers baptism himself, but not yet. You stand in a new basilica, blinking at stained glass. It smells like incense and fresh plaster, feels inevitable. Let's zoom out again. It's been nearly 100 years since Caracalla gave everyone citizenship. Rome has changed governments, gods, currency, geography, but people still trade salt by the seashore, still argue over wine prices, still carve graffiti into marble. In 330, Constantine founds a new city, Constantinople. You take a boat across the Bosporus. The city is young, sharp, filled with cranes and scaffolding, but it already feels like the future, because Rome isn't per city anymore. It's an idea, a legacy, a shifting center of gravity. You climb a hill, turn back and see the empire stretching in two directions, and you think, this might just last forever. Part 5, and just like that, you're here, still breathing, still standing, still you. You wake to the sound of a funeral procession somewhere nearby. Soft drums, feet shuffling on flagstones. The air smells of incense and wet clay. The year is 284 now, and nothing about the empire feels stable anymore. You've seen emperors rise and fall so quickly it's hard to keep track. Names blur, reasons vanish. Power has become a passing fever, short, dangerous, and contagious. But this day is different. You don't know it yet, but change is coming. Because today, in a camp by the Danube, a man named Diocles becomes emperor. Soon he'll be known as Diocletian. He doesn't look like much now, broad-chested, stern, more soldier than senator, but history is going to remember him. Maybe even thank him, because somehow, against all odds, he will patch this bleeding empire back together with spit, strategy, and steel. But that's for later. Right now you're thinking about how tired you are, not just physically, though yes, your knees creak, like an old door, but deep down, empire tired. The kind of weariness that settles into your bones when every road leads to war, plague, or taxes. You sit by a dry fountain and watch a cat weave between broken statues, and for a moment you wonder if Rome is dying or just evolving into something unrecognizable. Because here's the thing. After all this chaos, the Severans, the soldier, emperors, the 25 rulers in 50 years, something has shifted. People are no longer talking about when Rome will rise again. They're wondering what Rome even is now. You see hints of this everywhere. Old temples converted into fortresses, rich senators abandoning togas for tunics, coins with strange new gods. Even the language feels different, less musical, more clipped, like it's forgotten how to sing. One afternoon, you help rebuild a collapsed bakery wall. The man beside you, Gaulish accent, crooked smile, talks about his hometown. Used to be scared of Rome, he says. Now, Rome's scared of us. He laughs. You don't. You've seen the fear, though. In border towns burned too quickly, for records to survive. In governors fleeing ahead of Gothic raids. In entire legions who now swear loyalty only to whoever feeds them best. That's what the empire has become, a map of appetites. Still, life goes on. You attend a wedding under torchlight, two locals pledging loyalty as much as love. You witness the start of another plague, rats scurrying from empty kitchens, priests whispering prayers into the dark. You help a child bury his dog and realize he has never known a world where emperors last longer than birthdays. The empire is sick, but it hasn't stopped breathing. And then Diocletian moves. Like a surgeon with a rusty knife, he begins to carve the empire into something new. He divides it, not to destroy but to control. East and West, two emperors, two junior co-emperors beneath them, 4 rulers in total, a tetrarchy. It sounds mad, like trying to juggle fire while standing on ice. But somehow it works. For now you watch as order returns, piece by slow piece. Roads repaired, tax ledgers rewritten, army ranks replenished, even coinage, that pathetic debased currency you once used to plug a drafty window, is reformed. New silver, new faces, new hope. But Diocletian isn't done. He cracks down on Christians, hard. You've met a few by now, quiet folk mostly. Fish symbols scratched on walls, prayers mumbled in alleys. Some are radical, yes, loudly refusing. The old gods refusing to serve in armies, but many are just kind. So when the purges begin, it feels wrong. The arrests, the beatings, the executions. You see one girl, maybe 17, led away in chains for refusing to burn incense to Jupiter. Her eyes don't flinch, yours do. You know the old gods are crumbling, not because of her, but because Rome is changing faster than Jupiter can keep up. Historians still debate whether Diocletian saved the empire or just delayed its inevitable collapse. Some say he was a genius, others a tyrant. You don't know anymore. You just know that when he retires, and yes, retires him to grow cabbages on the Adriatic coast, the empire doesn't collapse like it once would have. It holds. Barely. By now, the whispers are everywhere. Late Antiquity. A phrase you hadn't heard before. But you feel it, like the difference between dusk and dark. The same landscape, but bathed in a new, stranger light. Old Rome isn't dead. It's dreaming. You walk through a market where Greek blends into Latin, where silk traders gossip about Persia, where boys with African names chant lines from Virgil. Everything is mixing now, blending. The future doesn't speak one tongue anymore. It has an accent. One night you climb a watchtower and stare out over the hills. The stars feel closer than the Senate. The breeze smells like almonds and wood smoke. Below you, a woman sings a lullaby in a language you can't quite place. It sounds old, older than Rome, older than the empire, maybe older than memory itself. You sit beside a fire and warm your hands, and you realize you're still here. somehow. Through assassinations and invaders, emperors and reforms, through plagues and dreams and broken statues, you have lived through the century that cracked Rome open and made something new from the pieces. Tomorrow will come, but for tonight there is warmth and the quiet, strange comfort of knowing. History hasn't ended, it's just turning a page waiting for final wind down. And so tonight's story comes to an end. Do you remember? The sound of funeral drums echoing through stone streets, the flickering firelight of a midnight wedding, the brave young girl walking unflinching into chains, the aging emperor tending his quiet garden. Each scene, each moment, has carried us through a Rome that was shifting and reshaping before our eyes. Now, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself there, wandering through the bustling markets of Constantinople, standing atop a lonely watchtower, or warming your hands beside a campfire under ancient stars. Let your dreams continue the story, weaving you into the living tapestry of an empire that never truly fades. I wish you a deep and peaceful sleep. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this journey tonight, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters. I still have so many more stories to share with you. And if you have any feedback or if there's a detail you'd like me to explore further, please leave a comment below. Every suggestion helps me make the next episodes even better. Sleep well, my friend, until our next adventure.